Hey everyone, happy Cybersecurity Sunday, where I dive into the security landscape with real industry experts and practitioners. And I'm really excited to have my go-to person on cybersecurity topics on Twitter, Bob Carver. Bob, how are you?
Doing great. How are you, Evan?
I'm good, very relaxed because it's Sunday, so we can have a really casual, fun, if that's a thing in our space, conversation about security topics.
Sure.
But before we dive into the content and the topics, maybe introduce yourself, your background for the folks viewing.
Yeah, sure. Bob Carver. I've been in cybersecurity since 1999. My
Wow.
first project was making a encryption product that encrypted data communications between financial institutions, and it was probably used for, I don't know, close to a decade, I'm sure, and probably up to definitely hundreds of billions of dollars of money were transferred. So
Wow,
in
that's
that
interesting. So you
encrypted,
started in the financial space,
yes.
and after that, I think you went into telecom, wireless, where you
Mhm.
have been for, gosh, almost 20 years, I'm guessing. We
Yeah,
won't talk about your employer, but a big wireless provider
right.
that everyone knows. And that's been quite a journey as
Oh
well for
yeah.
you.
Yeah, I was employee number one.
Wow.
There was a major, uh, uh, I guess you could say, uh, not an actress or somebody that's in the news a lot, that their account got hacked, and uh, my company decided that they needed to hire some full-time folks, not just some
Imagine that.
part-time and contractors. So
Wow.
started everything from ground zero, and there was a little bit in place, but not a lot. And I was hired before a director, hired before the CISO. I mean, it was like there was very little in place. And of course, all of a sudden, I had like, millions and millions of security events being thrown upon me. And then I was able to hire one guy after I think about 6 or 9 months. And I said, you realize there's between us, there's probably over 10 million events per person here to
Oh,
look
my
at a day.
goodness.
But anyway, gradually, now there's, many people, dozens of people that do the same work that I originally started. And I'm more in a position where, I do strategy and threat hunting and look for risks that really the company's not paying attention to. So,
Yeah, I love your content is very forward looking. And speaking of forward looking, that's kind of the theme for today, Cyber Sunday, is, a little retro on what were some of the key themes in 2022 that are carrying on, obviously. And then you have a wish list, which I really like because, we talk about predictions, but,
sure.
predictions, no one holds you accountable for any predictions anyone make. So what were some of the key themes? And this is actually an article that you wrote on LinkedIn that I actually just read.
Right.
Folks can find you on LinkedIn and connect there. But what were some of your, top observations, moving into
Sure.
the new year?
Well, one of the things that is bothered me and concerned me is that a lot of major companies, and it doesn't even have to be a major company, a lot of companies feel that their DevOps and lab environments, it's where developers write their code and that sort of thing. They don't consider it as important to protect those areas as they do as their main networks or
Hmm.
primary networks. And it's caused a lot of issues this year for major corporations. I mean, GitHub has had, probably a dozen major corporations that they had issues where they lost code. They may have accidentally left passwords in the GitHub,
Oh
in
my
their code,
goodness.
along with their code. LastPass probably, I mean, they probably lost tens of thousands of customers. LastPass is being a password manager.
Hmm.
Um, AstraZeneca, a major big pharma, they lost a lot of server credentials to their Salesforce platform that had patient PHI in it, private information of individuals. Okta their entire source code was stolen, and of course LastPass, as I talked earlier, they had some major parts of their development environment stolen, but it had some personally identified information stolen that was directly tied to customers, current customers. So it hasn't been a good year for DevOps and lab environments.
Talk about the back door. Literally, it's coming through the back door, and that those are some scary stories that made the news. And you also touch on supply chain, which has been a big topic of threat.
And of course, again, SolarWinds was one of the big ones, and that was a while back, but SolarWinds was in a lot of major corporations and also federal agencies. And basically, when SolarWinds was compromised, then all the customers were compromised because they were able to modify the code, the SolarWinds code that is pushed out to various customers. And so essentially they had a backdoor into the company through SolarWinds. And then again, LastPass, if you're going to lose some passwords that way, LastPass did, to be somewhat fair, LastPass did have some encryption and some what they call salting and hashing, which makes it a little more difficult than just standard decryption. But the information's out there for somebody to try to hack away and eventually try to get some information out of that.
Unbelievable. Yeah, we hear these blockbuster stories and we don't hear the follow-up, where are they 6, 12, 18 months after the breach? And we never quite know where things stand.
And now Toyota, that's interesting too. Toyota, they didn't get compromised, but one of their suppliers got compromised. And they had to drop their production by 13,000 units a month. So you imagine what type of profit margin, they lost because of that. And there was also the supply chain issues of not getting enough parts for cars to sell them in the first place. So
so it's like a double whammy. A lot of these supply chain, companies on the supply chain, these are small vendors. They're not necessarily, they don't have dedicated teams like your firm does. So it's really vulnerable. And you raise a number of interesting questions. I would encourage folks to read the blog, to get those key questions answered. Because the other topic you really talk a lot about in your blog is cybersecurity insurance. Where are we with that? I don't actually know of anyone who's procured cybersecurity insurance, so I'd love to hear more about what it is exactly.
Well, here's sort of the starts. What happened is Lloyd's of London got compromised a while back, but before they got compromised, they announced that all their customers, they would no longer insure any nation state compromises. So, the I guess you'd say the adversaries of the West. I don't have to exactly name those. I think most people would know who they are. But if it found out that a compromise took place because of those enemy nation states, Lloyd's will not cover in their cyber insurance anymore those compromises. So that's a major large portion. It's not, it's not all of it, but it's a large portion. But as soon as they announced that, with less than 2 weeks, I think maybe even a week, they got compromised by a nation state themselves, which is unfortunate. But a lot of people that were depending on that insurance going forward to be able to cover those type of situations are no longer covered. And then there was another company, I think Zurich Insurance. They announced some things too, that they weren't going to be covering a lot of different things. And there is a concern that they're going to be a target here pretty soon too. But this year, I think we'll see, we already saw premiums, going up, 40, 50, or 100, or even 200% for some people. I think that's going to continue to happen, but also the requirements that they're going to put in place. And they're not just going to say, here's the checklist, you have one of these. They're going to have an auditor come in and say, do you really have one of these? And are you using it? And are there capable, trained people that are operating this on a daily basis and looking at the security logs? So they're going to want proof that you're doing this, not just saying, yeah, I got one of those, no problem. So it's going to be much more difficult.
So speaking of difficulty, zero trust is all the rage, at least on the marketing front. Maybe define zero trust for us, because you have different definitions.
Sure.
And how's it going to help?
And there is, I tell you, zero trust is, I mean, Gartner did publish some of the original papers on this, but if you go out and talk to different vendors, they're going to give you a little different slant depending on their product offerings. I think one of the things is being able to identify not only the individuals that are involved with accessing networks, but then you identifying the devices, like whether it's a phone, a tablet, a computer, and verifying that they're okay, that they're trusted, they're a trusted device, they're a trusted person, and are they trusted to receive a certain level of authorization? I mean, can they maybe read a certain thing in the database, or can they actually make changes to that database? Or are they not authorized at all to look at a certain part of a database or a system per se? So I think it comes down to trust and also verify. The other thing is that not all zero trust implementations are created equal. There's going to be gaps. One of the concerns is we're having a lot of weaknesses in the APIs that are used to access networks, especially cloud networks and virtual machines and that sort of thing. But also just the cloud it's in itself needs to continue to be tighten the security and have proper visibility into what they need to see to be able to protect those networks.
Yeah, the amount of databases that are just left open on some Amazon S3 instance.
Yes. Yeah.
And gets discovered is just amazing. You read about it every day. One of the kind of almost science fiction topics you talk about is theft of digital likeness. This is almost something you see in the movies, but with generative AI, this is becoming very real. So what's the threat here?
Yeah. Well, I think it could be used for a lot of different things. In a corporate situation where theft of, financial, money, that sort of thing, can be used where somebody's cloned, say a CEO's clone or CFO's clone, or somebody high up in the organization that has approval rights to transfer large amounts of funds. And it's already happened many times. But, you clone somebody's voices. You can clone somebody's face, and you can even, you can clone the person's biometrics, their iris scans or possibly even hand and fingerprints. So a lot of this could be used to steal that sort of thing. The other part is, nation states, and it's already happened in many instances where governments can be fooled into thinking that certain people that, whether it's a president or, somebody in Congress or a representative somehow of a certain country, their information is stolen, their biometrics is stolen. And they've done this where they develop a short film or video, and they're saying things and it looks like them, it sounds like them, but it's totally synthetic. They've stolen that information to be able to make that video or the voice or whatever they need to.
Amazing. Amazing. So the tidal wave of ransomware attacks is continuing, not going anywhere. Ransomware as a service is just the kind of rocket fuel for this industry. These groups now have customer service. That's pretty good. So you can get your data back. Where do we go next? How can we kind of mitigate these ransomware attacks?
Well, one of the trends that's happening right now is that there's actually less people paying the ransoms. substantially less. I heard some people have reported up to 40% less of the previous year, last year. But what's happening is some of these guys are even giving up on the encryption part because people are finally starting to get better backups of their systems, which is a good thing, where the backups can't be compromised by part of that encryption. But what they're doing is they're stealing the data anyway, and then they're using that as leverage to to get money out of people's, and sometimes even get money out of the, if it's a customer, they may go directly to the customers and try to leverage the customers to put leverage on the company or the individual the customer also. So they're changing their tactics a little bit. Of course, companies continue to need to make better backups that can't be compromised. So at least they can restore their computers to the normal state. But then now I think companies need to look at being able to have better ways to not have that data being exfiltrated from their company.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most diabolical, area that you talked about of, new threat vectors in electronic vehicles, purchases, cars malfunctioning, causing accidents, EV charging stations being shut down, remote auto theft. I mean, that's one that I heard about. So what is going on there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tesla's been in the news several times in the last few years where a new I guess you say hacker or pen tester of sorts goes out and figures out a way to break into a Tesla. Of course, this can also have issues of where if the Tesla doesn't work right and the backup system doesn't work all right. I've heard situations where a customer was not able to get out of their car. They had a situation where they said even though he had the battery charging overnight, when he left the driveway, it was 100% full. All was good, ready to go. And then he drove down the road 10 or 15 minutes, and the dashboard says, "You have a problem here. Your battery is low. You're gonna have to pull over." And he thought, well, that can't be. I checked it before I left. I was 100% full. And then the next thing you know, he stalls in the middle of the highway, and then his doors locked, and he could not get out of the car.
Oh, jeez.
So
again, where this is
and there was a
truth
backup
is
system,
stranger
and the
than
backup
fiction. Yeah.
and then the backup system that they tell you you have access to use this backup method to get out if you get stuck like that, and the backup system didn't work. So crazy things like that happen. The article I read wasn't clear whether this was done on purpose or if it was just some sort of code that went awry and did not work as advertised. But it was definitely something that went bad. But there's been people that have broken into multiple cars. As a matter of fact, recently there was an article. I think they had either 16 or 18 manufacturers where people could break into the car at least at one level or another to various degrees.
Insurance companies have started not insuring certain models from Kia, I think, and Hyundai.
Yeah,
because they're too easy to get into with cloning, the RFID key fob, and you literally just kind of open the door and drive away with it.
Yeah, and of course, Tesla has been known for extremely high insurance, more than others too. Because part of that, though, is due to the repairs are so difficult to be made in good parts. But that's a different issue, I guess.
Well, more fun and games. So you don't talk about solutions necessarily. They're multifold challenges, but you do talk about, a wish list for 2023.
Sure.
And, let's talk about that wish list. So number one is around cyber insurance. What's the balancing act between, getting enterprise best practices and getting someone to insure your mistakes or effects of
sure hacking? Well, one of the things I think The one of the GRC or government risk and compliance frameworks, which I call it more of a foundation than a framework, is the NIST CSF. And following the recommendations that they have within that, and trying to up your game, basically your cyber defense game per se, that's probably a good thing. And also, you're probably going to find out from the insurance companies exactly what they're looking for, and to make sure that you can get those items in place. Also, you might want to have somebody that's a general risk person and an attorney nowadays, because there's going to be probably some fine print, some disclaimers, and some things that you're not going to be covered on. And you're definitely going to want that. You don't want the surprise to happen after a large multi-million-dollar breach. You want to know before, so you can be prepared.
Yeah. Read the terms and conditions. No one ever does something. But the other one I loved was, teaching concepts and ideas around data protection, data privacy, et cetera, in grade school. How cool would that be?
Yeah. There is one of the Nordic countries has been actually doing this starting in grade school. And there's some statistics that are occasionally put out of countries of how many, what percentage of the country is considered to be compromised. You mean part of a botnet, or have a backdoor in their systems and that sort of thing. And that particular Nordic country, and I don't remember. I think it was Finland, but don't quote me on that. It's one of the Nordic countries. That country did have one of the lowest percentage of compromises per capita of any country in the entire world. And I think that it goes to show there is a correlation between starting kids out young, learning about cybersecurity, learning about privacy, what they need to look for, and not to be fooled. And I tell you, I saw a video one time where they had some like high school students in one of the Nordic countries that did have this training, and they weren't easily fooled. I mean, they were definitely better educated than most Western countries.
Yeah, and talk about, training the next wave of cybersecurity experts, for which we need, a whole new, army to be recruited there. What a great start that would be. The other one you talk about, which is my favorite, is getting rid of passwords. I mean, what a joy as a user not to have to use passwords in different applications. And it's coming, right? It's slowly but surely.
It seems like it's coming slowly but surely. It's, they've been saying this for at least a decade, I think now. But there is the passkeys, and that is out, and that was Apple and Google and Microsoft worked together on coming out with passkeys. The only thing right now, you would have to be very comfortable with letting those companies take care of the security of passkeys. So I think it's sort of for me, it'd be more of a wait and see a little bit to see how secure it is in real life. I know they've been testing it for a long time, but it sounds like it might be a possibility. The other thing is to add to passwords is to use security keys. Well, first of all, the easiest thing would be two-factor authentication using an app. I'm personally recommending not using two-factor authentication using SMS or text messages if you can avoid it. There are some companies
that's the go-to for a lot of people. Yeah,
that's the only thing they allow on some companies. I think they need to get back past that and use some of the multi-factor authentication apps that are considered more secure that will go on a phone. But then the ultimate now is a password and a security key. Now, it's possible down the road we might see more just where there is a security key only. Now, the downside of that is if you lose your security key, then then there could be an issue of getting into
you're what we used to call SOL.
Yes, yes.
Or you could be, again, referencing our Nordic friends. In Sweden, it's quite popular now to get a NFC implant
Right.
in your hand. I read that story. I thought it was kind of a joke or a lark, but
Yeah.
no, there are thousands, tens of thousands of Swedes who
Sure.
have an NFC little chip implanted to get in their office or start their car,
Right.
and they don't seem to mind. It's a bridge too far
Yeah.
for me personally, but
Yeah.
hey, whatever floats
The,
your boat.
the concern there is once you get one of those planted into you, then if you have NFC detectors anywhere, they can track exactly where you go and anywhere you go all the time. So
You're done.
no
You're done.
hiding.
No hiding for you. Well, the other last recommendation we'll talk about is, putting end of life dates on systems, applications, devices. I mean, these things hang around forever. These legacy systems or apps or software. And I love this, expiration dates. Do you actually see anyone going down this route, or is this really a
Unfortunately,
wish
I'm
list?
not seeing too many people do that. There are some major companies, say like a Cisco or that sort of
Mhm.
thing, that will say, "Oh, well, this particular device is end of life." They don't say you have to take it off the network. That's up to you. But they just not going to provide any more security updates. If there's a vulnerability, it's on you to buy a new device. And of course, some of those devices are sometimes extremely expensive.
Mm.
But the concern is there's a lot of those type of devices that are in corporate networks, and also say like systems that control the electric grid or manufacturing or gas lines that used in heating in a lot of places. So there is a concern that when those devices are no longer really supported and can't be updated, then anything that's connected to those is at risk. And that could be
Yeah.
many of us, unfortunately.
Yeah, one of the worst offenders for us work from home types is your router. Those are often, kind of devices that stay around for a decade or more
Sure.
and can't even be updated. Some of the older models, they don't even have
Yeah.
patches or updates. And wow, that's what an easy way to get into your home network. But enough fun talk for a Sunday. How are you? Where are you going to travel next? Any events? Any trips planned, personal or professional?
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to this spring?
I've been a little bit I guess you could say being extremely paranoid with we've had a little bit of COVID and RSV and the flu going around, and so I probably won't travel till maybe this summer. I'm hoping that I can be back at Black Hat and DEF CON again this summer.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. Well, folks can reach out to you here. We're virtual, still connected, and you're a prolific tweeter. So
Yeah,
everyone follow
and
Bob Carver. Yes, and you had one final
also
thought.
also oh I'm sorry. Also on LinkedIn, I
Oh yeah,
actually on LinkedIn I'm rated in the top 5 in the world, so for
wow,
cybersecurity. So
fantastic. Well, follow and connect with Bob on LinkedIn. I've actually included a link to your article in the post so people can read it there.
thank
And
you.
thanks, Bob, for catching up. It's been too long,
It's
and
been a
being
long
the
time, Evan.
inaugural guest on
I
Cybersecurity Sunday.
I hope to be able to see you in person again one of these days, Evan.
Okay, we'll make it happen, sir.
You
All right, thanks
take care.
everyone.
Bye,
Thanks for
everybody.
viewing.